Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome to our continued playthrough of A Most Fearful Sacrifices, a slaughter pen scenario. In episode 1, Confederate forces have all but taken Big Round Top and have pushed to the top of Little Round Top. Can the Union forces recover or will the Confederate forces roll to victory? Let's jump in and continue. As we start out the second hour of this battle, let's recap the first hour. Right now it's 5 o'clock on July 2nd, 1863. Sun dipping a little bit lower in the west. Union forces and Confederate forces have been struggling for Little Round Top and Big Round Top for the past hour. As it started out, Robertson and Law's brigade started to the west of Big Round Top and have pushed back Ward's brigade in some fierce fighting over this area. They've all but taken Big Round Top. Technically, Law's brigade hasn't captured this yet, but it should prevail and grab that shortly in this second hour. The majority of the fiercest fighting in the first hour, however, was a charge by Robertson's brigade, pushing back Union forces and actually temporarily occupying the top of Little Round Top here, pushing Vincent's brigade, half of Vincent's brigade, off the precipice. However, the other half of Vincent's brigade put on some withering fire to drive back Robertson's brigade, and as we start the second hour of the battle here, the big question mark is, can these Confederate forces, which are very strong, push back and continue their momentum to take the top of Little Round Top? Union forces have a problem as well. Both Vincent's brigade here, the stronger portion, and Ward's brigade are shaken. The answer for them may lie in these reinforcements. Ward's brigade coming in and some artillery that they can bring to bear as well. And yet, Confederate forces have another contingent of Law's brigade arriving shortly as well. The battle should heat up now. Let's get started with the 5 o'clock hour. Let's go take a look at our command structure for this next hour. So we have to designate divisional priority for Sickles' 3rd Corps here. We're going to shift this around a little bit. We also have Ayer's division here, which is the reinforcement infantry, Weed's brigade coming in, so we have to allow for them. Barnes' division here, I think, is the most important one. That's Vincent's brigade up on the top of Little Round Top, so we want to prioritize them and make sure they're going to go. So put them in divisional priority 1. I think reinforcements are going to be key, so I've put Ayer's division in 2nd priority. Burns' division is in 3rd priority. There, Ward's brigade, that's kind of beat up and relatively weak on the south side of the Union line. So this is our priority for the Union forces in the 5 o'clock hour. For the Confederate forces, everybody still falls under Hood's command here in Longstreet's 1st Corps, so we just have divisional priority 1, which is Hood's card right here. Really easy for the Confederate forces. Now it's time for us to build the command deck for each side. Of course, we have Fog of War, Longstreet's 1st Corps core activation, and Sickles' 3rd Corps core activation that are mandatory cards in here. Then each side gets to pick 2 of their 15 events. Went back and forth on this a lot. In the end, I decided to pick Fast Courier for both sides, Rebel Yell for the Confederate side, and then Rally Around the Flag for the Union side. Picked Fast Courier for both sides because I think for the Confederate forces, they want speed is of the essence. They might be able to get 2 activations of their brigade by doing this, of their division by doing this, and that helps a lot for them. Rebel Yell is a very strong attack that's going to create problems for the Unions to put Union forces to withstand. So I think these are 2 strong cards for the Confederate forces. The shaken units, Vincent's brigade and Ward's brigade, really seem to create problems for the Union forces. So I've played Rally Around the Flag here. Had some other choices, things like Good Ground and some things that could have kind of slowed down the Confederate advances. But I think getting those troops back into full 100% combat ready status is going to be a priority. I'm not sure this is the best move, but I'm kind of learning the game too as we're playing, but I'm going to go with this one. And then Fast Courier, just because the Union forces have 3 divisions they need to activate, this will make sure that we at least get to activate 2. So I will mix these in, and then pick 2 random cards and build our command deck for this turn. So as we start out the 5 o'clock hour, normally there would be an preliminary artillery bombardment phase, but because there's no artillery on the map, we're hopping over that phase and going right into the card activations here. Let's see how these events unfold in this next hour. Our first event is Rally Around the Flag. This is perfect for the Union forces because it's going to allow us to get exactly what we were hoping to have happen, is bring Vincent's brigade back up to full combat readiness. As 5 o'clock goes around, Vincent's forces here are going to rally. Now, I did make a mistake in the previous episode where I had Robertson's force here use this Rally Around the Flag event for their forces, even though he didn't have another troop of his own brigade there next to him. That was an error that I made in the previous episode. But this time Vincent's brigade does have their compatriots next to them, so they are able to do this, and this is exactly what we wanted, getting this strongest contingent of Vincent's brigade back up to full strength and with their heads on straight. So the boys rally. They're ready to start out here after they got driven off of Little Round Top. Let's see what happens next. Oh, Union off to a fast start here. So we have Fast Courier, activate any one division from a corps. So let's think about what we want to activate first here. There is a lot of ways we could go with this one. One thought would be to order Vincent's brigade to try to recapture the top of Little Round Top. But because Vincent's brigade is actually in the first divisional priority, I think they're going to get activated later anyway. So that makes me think that I think we're really going to need these reinforcements if we are going to hope to hold over the course of the next 2 hours for the Union. So we're going to activate Eyre's division here and bring in our fresh reinforcements of infantry. So we're going to activate Eyre's division here, and the rule is we subtract 1 from this die roll with the fast courier activity. It's not going to matter. This is more a matter of protocol than anything else. We get a 2, which reduces to a 1, which is 1 brigade, which is all we've got anyway. But just to go through the motions there. So let's get Weed's brigade into action here. Now Weed's brigade actually enters the battle here right at the bottom of Little Round Top. I was debating for a little bit here as to whether we want to pull them over here to reinforce the line here, because we know Law's troops are coming here and they're pretty strong. However, the battle here is for Little Round Top, and I think we're going to need some help up here eventually, so I don't think it's misplaced to have Weed's brigade come into the top here, and we can get them there. So using a maneuver order, which gives us a movement of 8 and restricts us from not being able to move next to engage with an enemy unit, they come in here at a half, then they go up here to 1 movement point. These actually gradual slope changes don't really influence anything, but this is a 2 movement point hex because it's all rocky and woods and stuff like that. So they'll go 3 to here, and then 5, and join Vincent's brigade at the top of Little Round Top. Now, stacking here is 20 strength points, so we are well below that. There's only 9 strength points here for the Union forces. So, Weed's brigade arrives shortly after 5 o'clock and joins Vincent's brigade on the top of Little Round Top. Robertson's brigade's task has just gotten a lot more challenging. I must say, as we've gotten into this 5 o'clock hour, very good initiative by the Union forces who have really regrouped quickly here. This could have easily gone the other way here. Army of Northern Virginia Veterans. So this card allows us to basically re-roll any fire combat or assault combat die roll, which is very, very handy. I'm also, however, I'm tempted here by this minimum move allowance, which would allow us to start to bring the rest of Law's brigade into action here. But I do think this is too valuable to pass up. So we're going to pull this card out of the deck. It goes to because it's got a hold status on it, it's going to go to the Confederate side, and they can play that any place in the remainder of this 5 o'clock hour. So let's go to our next card. Rebel Yell Hold. Here we go. It's going to get crazy. This is the card that allows us to basically give a ton of advantages to one rebel unit here, one rebel hex of soldiers here, and have them come full forward with an attack. So it is time to figure out who's going to do this. Confederates are charging. Let's go get them. So Hood has a couple of options here. He could have Robertson's brigade move north here and then cut east to try to push Weed's newly arrived brigade and the rest of Vincent's forces off the top of Little Round Top, driving them back down into the woods over here and giving the Confederates control of Little Round Top. I feel like this might be a bit premature though, especially considering that Union forces now have reinforcements up here. This is going to be a tough nut to crack for this shaken Robertson's brigade. Our other bold action here is to bring Law's forces, which by and far are the best units on the battlefield at this moment in time, and to push them straight here at Vincent's brigade and assault here. They're going to have to take withering fire, some defensive fire from both Ward and Vincent, but if they can withstand that, push Vincent back here and take this ground, they've split the Union forces here and put Little Round Top in serious trouble here. They could actually conceivably even push past and try to launch an assault at Little Round Top itself. This also gives them the advantage of pushing downhill before the Vincent's forces can regroup and get back on top of on Little Round Top here. I think that's going to be our move. I don't think this defensive fire here is going to be all that much of a problem. Famous last words. So let's order Law forward, up the hill. We're going to assault on Vincent's battalion here, but on Vincent's brigade. But first, defensive fire. So first up, we're going to have Vincent's brigade do defensive fire. I think Law's brigade might hold. It's only a combat factor of 1 because they're shaken, which is pretty useless. So yeah, we're not going to have Ward's fire do defensive fire. I think the chances are much greater that they would get fired back upon. So we're going to have just Vincent's brigade do the defensive fire here. Now their combat strength is 8. They're firing into rocky ground, so it does a 1 column shift to the left. So we're in the 6 or 7 column here. This is huge. A good shot here by Vincent's brigade could drive Law's forces back, perhaps shaking them and really putting a damper on the Confederate hopes here. If Law's forces survive this, they've got a good chance here to really swing the battle completely in their favor. Vincent's forces take aim. 34-4. That's not very good here. 34 is an easy cohesion check, and 4 is the red die roll added to a 3, which is Law's cohesion here, gives us a 7. No effect. It's a fail. Vincent's forces just did not get enough firepower on Law's forces, and it is time for an assault. Law's forces going to assault full on against Vincent's forces right here. 2 strongest units on the battlefield going at it as Law's forces pour downhill just below the crest of Little Round Top. Quick correction as we drive on, I should have tagged Law's forces here with the Rebel Yell, which would increase their cohesion by 1, which means the final result would have been an 8 on that fire combat cohesion test. Still no effect, no matter, but I just wanted to make sure I got that right. So let's calculate our attack now. Law's force here with a strength of 9 is attacking an assault into a rocky woods hex here, which means that they go 2 column shifts to the left. This is a tough assault. However, if we compare the cohesion here, it's a 4 -1 because there's no one else from Law's brigade adjacent to them, to a 3. Rebel Yell raises it back up to a 4. They have a 1 cohesion rating advantage over Vincent's brigade, which is a 3. They have support from the northwest. So this shifts it back 1 to the right for the Confederate forces, meaning the cumulative right now is 1 to the left. However, Rebel Yell is a 2 column shift to the right. I mean, this is an attack in the 8 or 9 column, and we're shifting 1 to the right to the 10 column here. Law's forces charge. 34 again consecutively. They get a regular result here, okay? Vincent's performance in this assault is basically a 9. There are no modifiers for this. Everything's been calculated in the other side, and they're right there. So just straight up in the 9 column, hoping for good results for Vincent and the Union forces. 22 is doubles. Oh, that means it's got something goofy going on. No effect. Oh, this is catastrophic for the Union forces. However, we do have a combat event result here. Under our combat event table, under a defending unit roll on a 22 is inspirational leadership and heroics. Organize inspiring the defense. After the rolled result is applied, remove all shaken markers from units that remain in the defending hex. Don't think that's going to matter here. We'll take a look at the combat event momentarily, but if we look at the result of the close assault here, a regular result against a no effect is the defender is shaken and it must skedaddle 1. So Vincent's forces shaken again, and they have to skedaddle to the east 1, fully off of Little Round Top here, back down to the lower ground. Law's force can advance, and they will, and they can do a breakthrough on this one as well. On further reflection here, we're gonna hold Law's troops here instead of having them do the breakthrough advance. And my reasoning is thus: this is gonna be roughly a coin flip here. They're attacking up this steep hex side, and if they fail, they would have to retreat under withering fire here from these defensive unit, from these other Union troops. They could potentially be wiped out. I mean, just almost taken out of the battle if they fail this attack. It's kind of a coin flip. I don't think the Confederate forces need to press the advantage so urgently at this point in the battle. They've got the Union forces kind of pushed back here, and yeah, this is a problem, but it's not worth, I think, the risk at this point in time. So Law's troops crest here, drive Vincent's forces back, and they're going to hold this ground here and not proceed in, advancing up and try to push their attack further onto the top of the hill here. Moving on to our next stage, one of the things I realized we probably could have done with this as the rebels, we could have held this card and perhaps waited for Law's other half of the brigade to maneuver over, taken some time to maneuver, and then launch this attack to make it even stronger. So something to consider there too. Timing is a lot of everything with this. Hat on the sword is another one. Play to cancel a skedaddle result against any one rebel unit during any fire combat or assault combat resolution. So this is a hold card. We'll pull this one off to the side now. The Confederates holding two of these, one to re-roll a dice roll in combat and one to cancel a skedaddle result. So pretty good cards there to be holding, although again, you want to use them before the end of the round, otherwise they are negated. Fog of War is up. You never know what this is going to bring. This is exactly what it's dictated here. Let's see what happens with this one. We get a 43. 43 is Union strategic option, forced march, unexpected delay, or a clever feint. So this presents some interesting options for the Union. We can do a forced march, which means we could bring in our reinforcements, that artillery, and bring them in right now. But to be fair, I think artillery is going to have trouble getting a line of sight on some of these units at the top of the hill with our units in the way. The other option here is an unexpected delay. So rather than bringing in our reinforcements immediately, we can designate any entry hex group of units for the Confederate forces and delay them a turn. So we're going to do that. So we're going to designate this Confederate brigade, the other contingent of Law's brigade, is getting hit by this unexpected delay. It's going to hold them up an hour, which means I think they're going to arrive too late to be a factor in the battle, almost eventually kind of taking this brigade out of the picture altogether. Tough luck for the Confederate forces. Now we have 5 cards left in this stack, but we know that 2 of them are the core activations, and one of them is the Confederate the fast courier that's going to activate. So there's going to be a lot of action coming here in these last few cards. Here is the Confederate Corps activation. So Longstreet Corps activates. Let's roll the die roll here. I think it's still going to be largely perfunctory here, but let's see what we get. We get a 4, and that means division priority 1 and 2 and any artillery. There's no Confederate artillery. There's not a second divisional priority, so we're going to go to division priority 1. And on division priority 1, we just make a quick roll, get a 6, which is division by brigade plus Henry's artillery. So division by brigade means that the entire division activates, but you do each brigade separately and can give them separate orders. It's a better order system here for Longstreet. So that's good for the Confederates. Looking at the division by brigade order, we can issue separate orders to these 2 groups, Law's brigade and Robertson's brigade. Our reinforcements are delayed, unfortunately, but we're going to issue an assault order to Law's brigade and have them push up here onto Little Round Top and attack here, trying to take this last victory condition. We're going to give a defend order to Robertson's brigade, which will allow them to sit pretty or perhaps move up here if we drive these Union forces off the hill. But in either case, they're going to be able to rally and to get out of that shaken status to regroup. We're going to start first with Law's brigade and issue them the assault or the attack order here. First, we're going to have this brigade here, the other half, which is completely out of the action. They're on the other side of Big Round Top, while the other half of the brigade has performed all these heroic charges and things like that. But we will have them move up here. This is a movement of 4 movement points to get up to the top of the hill here. Movement under an attack order is 5. They don't have enough to get down the other side. They're catching their breath and huffing and puffing, but they have captured Big Round Top here for the Confederate forces, giving the Confederate forces their second victory point hex, because they were the last group to occupy this hex as well. But of more importance here, the other half of Law's brigade, active portion of Law's brigade, is going to push up to the top here. Now, disengagement costs 2 movement points. They're going to rocky ground as 4, but they always have that minimum movement of 1, which they can do here. So they climb up, they disengage from Ward's brigade, climb up to the top of Little Round Top, occupying it again for the Confederates, and now it's time to launch an assault on Weed's brigade here and the other half of Vincent's brigade. But first, as always, defensive fire. Defensive fire here, these 2 units must combine into a combined strength of 9, which is a very strong attack. There are no column shifts here, so just a straight up 9 as Ward's brigade and Vincent's brigade open fire as Law's troops crest the top of Little Round Top here. Oh, this is murderous fire. 66 is doubles with a 5. The 5 is good for the defenders here, but 66, in addition to being a critical event, one of those special events, this is a severe cohesion test for Law's Brigade. A tough test here, but let's see what the 66 is too on a firing unit roll. Each firing unit may immediately conduct another fire combat at any target hex. Double quick reloading. So they get to fire again? Okay, well, we do the first one first, I assume. So we get a severe test here. Now, the roll here for the morale is good for Law's troops. They have a 5. Their standing morale is a 3, because even though they're adjacent to a unit, they're from different brigades. So 5 and 3 is an 8. Under a severe test, it is shaken and skedaddle 1. Now, given that they can, the skedaddle here is optional, but given that they could face another round of fire here, I think we can have them skedaddle out of the way before that happens, right? Now that's I'm not quite sure of the rule there, right? Some of these combat events are, when two things are happening at once, like can they skedaddle and avoid that combat? I would think they could, so they don't get that second firing result, but I'm going to double check it. Quick rules check, this unit can fire again, but this result is applied first before this unit fires again. So we're going to have Law's unit here skedaddle out of the way. Now they are shaken. This shows, this kind of puts a dent here in the Confederate firing there, but a 66, such a brutal fire here by Weed's division, by Weed just arriving here, almost like heroes to the rescue here. They combine with Vincent's fire and tear Law's brigade apart. I just realized this is a mistake. Law's unit does not skedaddle to the southwest. It has to skedaddle to the west by default if there's two equal options available. This is probably a huge bad decision, because when they skedaddle down the side of Little Round Top here, they skedaddle right into Robertson's forces, which means that Robertson's forces have to now do a panic check. This I would probably do this differently, but let's just see how the panic check works as well too. They have to roll on this panic test result. Their morale here, again, their combat cohesion rating is a 4. They need a 3 or less to be unaffected by it. Oh, they just make it. This was a very unwise decision here, because they could very well have panicked and they could have gotten another shaken result. If they got a shaken result, they would have been battle worn, which would have completely changed the nature of the battle here. But I wouldn't recommend doing that, okay? But anyway, Law's forces skedaddle off the side here, down into where Robertson's forces are, and that finishes their assault activation. Now the question becomes what to do with Robertson's troop here, which we can activate as their own brigade order right after this. We definitely want to give them a defend order and have them rally, and I think, however, we're also going to have them shift here to the southeast. And this isn't ideal, because ideally I'd like Law's brigade to reconnect here. We have the other contingent of Law's brigade merrily enjoying themselves up on top of the crest of Big Round Top. But eventually I'd like to, in the next hour, have them come in and perhaps get together so we can ramp up Law's cohesion rating. But I think leaving this area open for the Confederates could create more problems for Ward's forces to push up and in here and split the Confederate forces. So we're going to have Robertson's brigade shift to the southeast. Then it's part of a defend move, and then they can rally at the end of that because there's no enemy units next to them. This will, I think, is the better alternative here for the Confederate forces. Let's see what is next here. Faulty fuses for the Union. So this was one of the random events that got tucked in here. Play this card immediately. It's a hold event. Play this event immediately before anyone Confederate artillery issues fire combat. Apply a 2-column shift on the combat results table for that fire. This doesn't help the Union at all because there is no Confederate artillery. So we will use the default event, which is any one unit may minimum move or issue fire combat. And with this minimum movement order, we're going to have Vincent's brigade, of course, push westward here to try to set themselves up to put more pressure here on Little Round Top. This is the victory here, right here. This also connects them to the other half of their brigade, which is a stronger position for the Union forces. it all hinges on this. This is the battle right here. And this final hour is going to determine whoever can control this is going to win the battle. And so we need to get as much force as possible leaning into this, the southwestern end of Little Round Top here. 3 cards left here. Command coordination. This is another random one that came in here. This event here allows the Union forces to try to activate a second division when their core activation is drawn. And we know that the Union core activation for this turn has not been drawn yet. It's one of these last 2 cards. So we're going to hold this off to the side and use it when the Union forces draw another draw their command card here, their divisional their core activation. So that one we push off to the side. These both are going to be activations here. Fast Courier. Okay. Now, unfortunately, the order of events here for the Confederate forces means that this is quite a bit less effective than had we drawn it first, right? It said activate any division for a corps that has not yet been activated this turn. Hood's division has already been activated, so we can't use it to activate them, which means we have to default here to the default event, which is to move any one unit or issue a fire combat. There's no fire combat we can do because nobody can see each other. They're both huddled on either side of Little Round Top here. But I think what we can do is the minimum move. So with the Confederate minimum move, I think what we're going to do is to try, I think Law's force here, if we can get Law's brigade acting in unison somehow in this last hour, I think it's going to give the Confederate forces much more of a chance. So with the minimum move, we're going to have this other half of Law's brigade come down the other side of Big Round Top, getting them within range here of getting at least closer to putting some pressure on some Union forces here. Alrighty, so now we go to the final card, which we know is the Union core activation. And we can add this one right into it here, which is to play this card after a core activates, but before rolling its command table dice. Increase the number of activated divisions by 1 in priority number, but deduct 2 from this added division's command table die roll. Okay, so we're going to add 1 in here. We'll make our roll here on this. It'd be nice, we're going to get the artillery in anyway, which is Martin's unit. So finally we'll get the Union artillery in here. Let's roll and see what we get. We get a 4, which is 1 brigade from divisional priority 1. Okay, that's okay, because we've only got 1 brigade in each divisional priority, and Randolph's artillery. In this scenario, Randolph's artillery is considered to be Martin's artillery. They're all the same thing. So it's going to be activating Martin's artillery, which is off the board. So we're going to bring them in. We'll get to move with them, but let's go see how the divisional activations work for the Union force. So we're over here on Sickle's 3rd Corps activation. Barnes is the first divisional priority, and because the result was in red and it says 1 brigade from divisional priority 1, we don't roll here. But the command coordination allows us to roll on Eyre's card here, but it is at -2, which is interesting because it's going to be 1 brigade, so it's going to activate here. But let's roll this up just for the sake of protocol here. We get a 1. You can't go lower than a 1, so it is 1 brigade from Eyre's division here, which is the only brigade out there, Weed's brigade. So to sum up, we can add Barnes' division here, which is Vincent's brigade. We get our artillery activated, and we get Eyre's brigade at 1 brigade activated, which is the Weed brigade that arrived as reinforcements. Let's figure out what we're going to do with all this energy on the Union side. So first up, let's activate the Union artillery here. Now the question is, where do we want to bring them? My initial thoughts were to bring them down here into these orchards here, down in this little kind of villa, this little farmstead here, and have them fire up onto the crest of Little Round Top. However, if there's a friendly unit adjacent to an enemy unit in the line of fire, that actually blocks the line of fire. So artillery, I don't think if we put them here, would have any sort of a good line of fire onto the top of Little Round Top when the Confederate forces try to crest it. So instead, I'm going to do something a little bit unorthodox, but I think it might work. We're going to bring them in here. Now also, by the scenario description, this here is the entry hex 2317. The designer has suggested that as the entry hex, however, because they adjusted the borders and then kind of never went back and adjusted that entry hex. So he suggested using 2315 instead. So I'm adjusting to that mid scenario now. We're going to have them come in here. It's a half movement rate, 1, 1.5. They're under a maneuver order, so they have 8 movement points. 2 and then 2.5 right up in here. This will give them a clear line of sight right down here on Law's brigade and should allow them in the beginning of the 6th hour here, next to set up quickly and get off a blast here at Law's Brigade as they huddle under the crest of Little Round Top. Now the question is, what do we do with Weed's Brigade and Vincent's Brigade? We could have Vincent's Brigade push over the top, but I'm concerned with this shaken status here on Vincent's Brigade and the low cohesion rating, that if they get into assault combat, close combat with some of these Union forces, they're going to be at a disadvantage. I think it makes sense to wait, have them regain their strength, and then make a push. So we're going to have them, give them a defend order as well. And with that, we're going to Vincent do nothing, and at the end of that defend order phase, we're going to have them rally, which is going to take their shaken marker away, get them back up to full strength. However, what we can do here with Vincent's other half of the brigade, because they have done nothing, we can have them actually build and throw together some defensive kind of protection here. We're going to have them build a hasty works up on top of the northeastern end of Little Round Top. So just some kind of defensive protection, woods, logs, brush and stuff like that to give them a little bit better protection here. Weed's Brigade, I don't think we really have anything we want to do with them. I mean, we could conceivably push them down here, but I'd like to keep them up on top of this other half of Little Round Top, just as because it's you know, one of the victory hexes here. So I think we're going to leave Weed's Brigade where they are, and that ends the Union activation here in the 5th hour. And with that, the 5th hour comes to a close and the clock strikes 6. As the battle shifts into its final hour, it is all to fight for. Technically, the Confederate forces still hold this ground as they were the last one to occupy it, but the Union forces are poised for a climb and an assault on it. We've got artillery to the northeast here. Unfortunately, Law's reinforcements, which could have been very helpful in this last hour, were delayed. So they are probably in effect taken out of this battle, but we do have the other half of Law, or the other contingent from Law's Brigade, pushing down from Big Round Top to perhaps tilt this precarious balance in their favor towards the end. It's all going to come down to the last hour. I'll put a link to the episode as soon as it's ready. Questions, comments, thoughts are always welcome. Thanks everybody for watching.